Hello and welcome to another discussion of Page Burners. We are working our way through the Malazan books by Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmont. We are currently working our way through Deadhouse Gates, the second book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. We'll eventually get to an Esselmont book, but probably after Midnight Tides because we're reading them in publication order. My name is Varsha. I run the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain, where we post these discussions, which is probably one of the places you're seeing them. And the group that we do these discussions with will go around introducing themselves and also discuss what they are most excited to chat about today. Sorry, Dan, could you start us off?
For me, I don't know. I'm never the first person. Yeah, I guess I'm Dan. There's nothing you need to know about me because there's nothing interesting. But I am interested in talking about. I wanted to talk about the governor of the seven cities, which I forget his name now. But I just wanted because he's such a scumbag, and I'm like, I don't understand what his plan is. So I wanted to just ask if I'm missing something about the general Malazan strategy and like how the empire is organized and stuff like that, because it seemed a bit confused.
Oh, you mean Pomqual Nong
Yeah,
the
Ponko,
Hyphus?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I agree. That's also, you only guess you're Dan. Okay. Let's go.
You never know.
Steve.
If you guess you're Dan, how do you know that there's nothing interesting about
I guess there's nothing interesting about me.
As far as you know.
So I'm Steve from Steve Talks Books and the pagechewing podcast and pagechewing.com. And we, this week, sorry, I just woke up from a nap. This week, I think what stood out to me most was in chapter 13, just the anticipation of what happens before a battle. That's always more interesting to me is what happens before and what happens after a battle, not so much what happens during. Just the aftermath and just the waiting and checking your equipment and making sure you're ready and are you ever really ready. Just that whole thing was really uncomfortable, but in a good way. So, and I will kick it over to to Mappo's number one fan, aka Carl.
Yeah, my name currently today is Mappo's number one fan because, well, it's self-explanatory. But no, I'm Carl from nowhere in particular. You can find my book Truth of Crowns. It's an epic fantasy thing on the internet, and I am most excited to talk about the death of Culp and Cowden because it was just really impactful to me. Hit me really hard. And I'll pass over to Culp's Mourner.
I'm Pops Mourner. My name is Shannon, and Shannon is me. And I just wanted Dan to know I think he's very interesting. And, Dan, you should be higher on yourself. But the thing I'm most
We're just
interested about,
getting it with the introductions today.
there's a lot I want to talk about, but the thing that really most jumped at me when I was rereading this was the bit with Calor and the Imperial Warren and stuff. That little brief section I thought was just so interesting. About a extraordinarily minor character from the first book.
It's almost like you were asking that you were Shannon. Like, are you like you were looking for confirmation? Like, I'm Shannon. Like, are you?
No, that was the me, and then I was staring Dan down because Dan has me as his name.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
One thing about this series, I'm never really sure if I should mourn a character because dead doesn't always mean dead. So I'm kind of conflicted because people die, but it's like
You should, because they never come back as the way they were before. So you should at least mourn who they were before they died.
Well, that's the same for everyone. We all change from day to day.
Yeah.
So, do you mourn your past self?
Abruptly. Sometimes
I
do,
guess.
yes.
I can tell you, I'm definitely feeling like I have reborn the worse for wear after St. Patrick's Day yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, just because we saw some people come back in the first book, Steve, doesn't mean that everybody's going to come back. And the people we lost today may not be coming back.
Well, when you set the bar, it's kind of like you set the expectations, and it's like, yeah, they'll be back. They're dead, but they'll be fine. They'll come back with a different name. It'll pretty much be the same person. Ask Pilar, sorry, whatever. You know,
Right.
Hairlock lives, aka hashtag Hairlock lives. Yeah, they'll be back.
It's a character we'll never mourn. Well, not just because he was an ass.
What is dead may never die.
Yeah.
By the way, was Calorie in the first book? I don't remember him.
He
He
was.
is.
We'll talk about
He
him.
was.
He was in exactly one scene.
Oh, was he? Okay. I must have missed it.
It's definitely a blink and you'll miss it moment. He has a conversation with Caladan Brood.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Maybe.
technically he was mentioned in an epigraph, I think. Like his name was dropped and then you saw him,
Yeah.
and he maybe had two
Okay.
sentences.
I remember the epigraph, I remember. I don't know. Because he is one of my favorite characters. I really like him. The character. So
Nice.
maybe I just missed it.
I think I'm most interested to talk about is the reveal that Icarium was at least 94,000 years old as of this book.
Yeah, I mean, at least is doing a lot of heavy lifting there because he destroyed a whole civilization 94,000 years ago, and presumably he didn't do that as a baby.
That's true.
And then how long
But-
do we have any idea of Mappo with him? I mean, I think like if we had any kind of a date, like 3,000 years, something like that, maybe is in my head.
I mean, Mappo
Oh,
speaks in centuries, not millennia. I feel like if he had been around for
Oh, maybe
more
not that
than
long.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's been that terribly long. I mean, a long time, but I don't know. I'm just curious if anybody caught even an estimate we could have.
It's definitely been at least centuries because I do remember there was like some throwaway mention that they've been like walking around together for like hundreds of years.
yeah.
Actually, it has to be millennia because in Darujistan, at the end of the last book, they said that Icarium and his Strel companion came along, and I guess they had built that clock for them or made some predictions using that clock. And did they mention the year of the apocalypse in Gardens of the Moon? Because apparently that comes around once every 1,000 years, and that's why the rebellion maybe got as strong as it did right now.
I'll catch that.
I'm trying to
Did it
remember
say Mappo
whether
was there though when he built that clock?
not sure, but somebody mentioned that when Icarium had visited Darujistan a millennium, like 1,000 years ago, Mappo was with him.
Okay.
Yeah, and they said like that guy who's always with him. So even at that point, he was someone who was known as someone who is Icarium's companion, I guess.
Does anyone else find the nameless ones like I'm intrigued by them, but I also find them kind of hilarious because they're so overly secretive about everything. Like they're even like we're nameless. Like they don't tell you anything. They're like just like you're gonna do this thing, and by my magic rod, you will do it. And everyone just talks around them. No, there's like no. I don't know. It's just so secretive that it's kind of funny to me. It is just the most extreme secrecy I think I've ever seen, even in like a magic cult. It's crazy. They don't even have names. Like, it's wild.
Do we know their race?
No.
Are they
One of them was described as like a blonde woman, I'm pretty sure. So implying they're human, or they look human adjacent.
But we don't know why Mappo's doing what they say, right?
I think we
presumably
kind of
just to save. You go, Varsha.
There was a flashback, right, in some previous chapter where there was some discussion to the effect that you shouldn't let this happen again to any other village. And
Yeah.
I think we can now guess that maybe Acadium was responsible for the destruction of Mappa's village too, because he also has thoughts about vengeance. Like, what about vengeance?
Yeah.
And he's still sticking around Acadium. So your question was why he's doing this,
Yeah.
right? Why he agreed?
Yeah, why he's doing it. I guess
Yeah,
why him? Why can't the nameless ones do it themselves if they have the power? Why do they need him?
that's an interesting question. Was it implied in Mapo's musings in this chapter that they have staves on which like the letters move and apparently are
Yeah.
driven by some sort of warren, right? Like that's what Mapo tells us now. And in and the letters moving, he says like he always wondered what warren that was. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I know now. Is that implied to be Acadium's warren somehow? And like he's powering them in some sense, and so they need him for something that they want?
I don't know. Does Ikariam have a warren? I didn't know. I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
I don't know. I didn't think he did, except that seemed, I mean, the direction that thought headed, it's like Mapo knows now, and it felt
Mhm.
like we are supposed to know too. It's not like something that's hidden from us. Um, and I'm guessing it's, I don't know.
I don't
It's
know.
weird.
I ain't no shit. Sometimes I'm
But
like reading it like, am I supposed to know this? Am I stupid? Or maybe I'm supposed to know it later. I don't know.
Yeah.
later,
I would just assume you're supposed to know it later.
yeah, when in doubt,
Okay.
later.
Okay.
Uh, do the other rereaders, do you guys have any idea on what Mapo meant with that Warren thing with the staffs?
I missed it.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure
I'm
either.
curious about that. And there's something else in that passage that reminded me of something that happens in books 9 and 10, but I'll chat about that in the spoiler section on the forum.
Yeah.
I'm
I
so
Please do.
tempted to read that thread. I have no idea.
So you can do that. Honestly, you can do that, and a lot of stuff will pass you by because like there's a bunch of language that you won't recognize or won't understand. But then that's I used to do that with the Reddit forums, right? And and then one day I was like, I'm not gonna understand. Like some character dies, and they were talking about it. I'm like, I'm not even going to remember his name by the time I get to this book. It's fine. I will look. And then I looked, and it wasn't fine. And then I opened another wiki page for something. That character had nothing to do with this character, but I found out who killed that character because the wiki page said this character witnessed that character killing the other character. So
Yeah.
you can't read the spoiler threads until it spoils something for you. And then
Yeah.
I thought Steve you had read the books.
Just until book 5.
Okay. I thought for some reason until like book 8 or something.
No.
Okay.
No, I think
just remind
that's
Me?
you,
Me?
Dan. Maybe
Carl and Varsha read all of them. I didn't know
yes.
Steve had read that far. And then, how far have you read, Dan? Just through book
I
3
think same as Steve around. Same as
You
Steve.
or
read
5?
Told the Hounds, right?
I
Oh,
think I remember something about some of the other what was it? Some of the other races of the fake elves and stuff like that. But I don't know which book it is. Is it Memories of Ice? I don't know.
we can't really comment on that. We're not there yet.
yeah.
There's some other books about other things. I'm sure I'll remember. I have vague images in my mind about some forests and some places, but I'm sure when I read them again, I'll be like, oh yeah,
While we're
there's
off,
some ships and cities. I don't know.
I'm reminded, Varsha, you're talking about scrolling through like Reddit or the spoiler threads and just like a lot of it going over your head because you don't know like what they're talking about. I basically accidentally did that when we were reading the Second Apocalypse, and it's like that's a series with so many opaque terms that you're just like, when they're throwing names, I had no idea what they're talking about. It was hysterical. In hindsight, I'm sure they were spoiling major in-game things, and I couldn't piece together. The only thing I knew was Kellis, and other than that, I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about. So it's happened. You can do it. It didn't spoil the series for me. Malazan, I think, is also dense with fantasy terminology that I wouldn't recommend it, but you're playing with fire.
I'm pretty sure there's also a lot of more characters that are going to come up which we haven't even heard of.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of spoilers which we're not even, I would read them and like, who's this guy? I don't know.
At least in the forum spoiler thread, I think we've been largely talking about characters we've already met. So
yeah. Do we want to? Where do we want to start? I guess with Steve's thing, the anticipation before the battle.
I was gonna say, that sounded
I
like
love how the
13.
chapter opens with the crazy ass giant Wiccan cattle dog holding the little roach dog in its mouth. That made me sad, but it was also hysterical, especially the nobles' reaction being such classic shits, like, and getting humbled. It was just that was beautiful, and to be honest, much more entertaining to read than the battle that followed, which I was largely indifferent to.
Yeah. Yes, I was gonna say, yes, I love this cattle dog. They didn't tell us its name here, but in like 2 chapters, they're gonna tell you its name is Bent. This is the same catalog we saw a couple chapters ago. It had its face all messed up, or its head all bent in, and he appeared to grab this lapdog and run off with it, and then now he's hanging out with Sormo or something. So yeah, we'll see this dog a little bit more. Definitely keeping an eye out for him now.
Steve, do you want to jump in and tell us, this was the thing you most want to talk about?
Yeah, just the build up, the waiting around, the kind of preparing for battle. The battle, I mean, I don't know. I've never really been one for battles, but the whole the build up before the battle on this one I thought was really well done. But it's kind of a long. I mean, it's pretty much the chapter, right? From we have a couple of things, but like the couple, like the refugees that die, it's kind of like, okay. I mean, I don't know. Like, I was more attached to Duiker and but these like faceless people dying. It's like, oh, okay, that sucks for them. So I'm not sure if it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be like a big deal, but so many people die that like these faceless people that it's like, okay.
It would help. It would be more impactful if we actually had a character among the refugees.
Yeah.
Like I do think that's something that this book is potentially missing, is that insider perspective, because the refugees really are just a mob to us. Like they're just like a blank slate, and it's sad when we watch like children dying, but like they don't feel like characters. They just feel like, it's easy to dehumanize a group, I guess, when you don't know anyone's names or who they are or what they care about, other than just surviving. Like I'm there with you. It's like, it's one of those things that, like, I'm much more upset when the soldiers start getting like killed or injured than, when the refugees start getting picked off, which, like, in real life, like, I'm sure, I would be upset, but it's just hard with this like fictional refugee group, when we have no connection to them.
The only connection is the nobles, which are shitheads, right?
Exactly.
If at least one of them was like nice and was like, oh, I care about the people and these are their problems and like all these things, maybe it would make it more relatable, sort of. But
Well, worse than that, Dan. I mean, we also get their servants. I mean, but that's really it. We got the nobles, we got the servants, and the nobles treat the servants awful. The servants are now by the end of what we read, they become soldiers.
Yeah.
Like it's not like there isn't room for it too, to include like some perspective there, or like to get attached to certain characters, because like Duiker wanders around them, like that's like a big famous thing he does, you know.
Yeah.
He's known around all the refugee camps because he just goes around and kind of mourns with all of them as people die. I almost wish the nameless Marine that you know, he hooks up with would have been like a refugee or something. I mean, I get it kind of puts her in the heart of the battle, but to me that would have been more interesting than just like another random Marine. Like we know lots of Marines. Like we have the ones we care about. That's great. And I don't know. It just
Yeah.
to
Maybe
me it
instead
does
of
feel like a hole in this story. Not in the sense of
what?
like a plot hole,
Yeah.
but I do think it would be emotionally richer and we would feel the stakes of for the refugees much more if we had someone, even just a single character to latch onto in that group.
What's the name of the guy that's with Duiker? The lieutenant? What's his name?
Corporal List.
Keneb.
Yeah, Les.
Or no,
I guess
I'm
if
sorry.
instead of Les, maybe if he had like a servant following him, carrying his things or other things, maybe that could be like he tells him like what's going on with the
But I love
thing.
List
I
so
don't know.
much.
I do like him. Maybe he could have both, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
I did
Yeah,
start
the
to
only
wonder. Oh, go ahead, Shannon. Sorry.
I just want to throw in real quick. Yeah, the only refugees we ever really hang out with are actually the ones that Kalam saved. Like that's you know, Keneb and his
Yeah.
family. Like that's really it.
I was gonna say I wish we had a Manala, you know, this really like interesting, you know, I mean I don't think Manala at this point is like the most compelling character, but she is still like to me like she's got grit. She's somewhat interesting, you know. Like I like how fiery she is, and this attraction she has to Kalam is compelling to me, especially knowing that she's gonna fucking chase after him, which is just insanity. Like she has lost her mind, but you know, tragedy will do that to people.
The fantasy version of chasing after the person you love at the airport.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, I did start to wonder why don't we know more about the refugees? Why are these faceless people? So on one hand, I would like to know some of them. On the other hand, do we really need more characters? Because I can't keep up with the ones we have. And okay, on that. So another thing is, I wondered if this was done on purpose to leave them faceless, because if we're looking at it from a soldier's perspective, they can't really worry too much about them. There's only so many things you can prioritize and worry about. The first thing is you need to stay alive, and you need to, you know, kind of follow the plan and keep people around you alive. But if you get too attached to them, then you won't really do your job, and you'll end up getting other people killed that are saving you. So I kind of wondered if that was done on purpose to show that they are kind of just sheep, and they're going to die, and you don't get too attached to them. You don't really spend time getting to know them, because if you worry too much about everything else, you'll be dead. You won't survive.
Interesting. That's a really interesting reading of it. Very very insightful. I think you may be right there. I'm certainly interested if you ever get Steven Erikson on here. This is now one I would like to talk to him about because I'm very curious. I mean, if he even remembers, you know, thought process for this. He's famous for being like, I don't know, I wrote that a decade ago. Like I don't remember what was going through my head, but because it is, I think, a distinct omission. So, but thank you, Steve. That's a really great reading. What's going on there?
On a similar note, we don't have too many rebel perspectives, right? And we may have talked about this before, about how the only rebels we've seen are kind of cruel and horrible. Like they chased after that girl, and Phila was saving them, saving the girl from um, the not refugees, the rebels. And well, we're unsure yet how to think about Leoman and Toblakai, and we don't really have their perspective. And Heberick seems to think Leoman is sort of only simulating being a fanatic, which is interesting to think about. But so far, I think both for the Empire and maybe for the readers too, the rebellion is not necessarily something that we'd want to even consider rooting for. Which which is interesting, right? Like with as many diverse perspectives as we get, I'm kind of surprised thinking about it that we don't have that yet in this book.
I don't know if we have any diverse perspectives here. I think we don't
That's
see
true.
the.
I think it hasn't fanned out yet to that level, to the levels it does in a later in the series.
No, I meant like the
Well,
shapeshifters and divers. But
Gee,
yeah,
Diverse
what, we didn't
perspective.
get
well, I
some
was
from
gonna
that
say
weird rat guy? Sorry, Shannon.
we now got Fellison in charge of the rebellion, so I think we're probably gonna start seeing more of that side.
That's true, but it's still sort of like an outsider getting into the rebellion, right? Like it's not anybody who started or is leading. Like we don't see the sparks that triggered the solve what they. But maybe
What are you
I
talking
mean
about? She is the Shaikh Reborn. You're not a true believer, Varsha.
maybe if it was someone other than Felicity.
yeah.
I would love to see Comist Relaway's perspective, because he's a turncoat, right? Like he started on the Malazan side, and so it's really interesting. Like that's a very interesting character, and I like his mystique, but I do feel like he's less interesting than he could be if we actually saw him, rather
Yeah.
than being this force in the background. And
Well, I
it is
like that
interesting.
we're kind of holding off on him
Yeah,
because we
it
just
is
kind of
interesting.
in these chapters start like, oh, we're about to run into him, and then it's like
Right.
I'm kind of excited now. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I with how many perspectives the series does have, I certainly, like, I understand Steve's trepidation about, like, oh god, even more characters to try to remember. Like, I think there is something to that. The cast can only be so large, but I do miss out on getting more of those rebel perspectives, particularly anyone among them who's maybe more sympathetic, for a series that's exploring, the nuances of disputes and not trying to paint groups as just like all good or all bad, or like showing, the bad actors everywhere. And, certainly some groups may be worse than others, may believe or be doing worse things. But I do wish we got a little more there. Certainly, though, it seems like we are going to increase those perspectives now that Shaikh is reborn in Felison.
I do think that what you said, Varsha, is interesting because it is very somewhat black and white, this book, in terms of factions, which is not the same as the first book at all. So it is interesting because it's a deliberate choice to make it that way, because there's nothing redeeming about some of the factions that we've encountered, like the rebels, or I don't know, even the way he's portraying Felison recently. There's not too many redeeming factors about it. So I wonder why he decided to do this way. I guess
Felison had, I think, a nice scene towards the end there before, I think it was in chapter 15, when we're confirmed that she's the one who appears, she is the new Shaikh Reborn or whatever.
Yeah.
That's, they're not convinced yet, but that's kind of the direction things are going, rather than Apsalar, right? Felison says, despite how mean she is, like, she won't let Haborak leave, and he's like, why won't you let me leave? Like, you hate me, and it's basically, she admits, to protect him, because she feels bad that she, didn't protect Bowden. Bowden is dead. And, so she will do what she can to protect Haborak.
Yeah.
Which I
I'm
do.
just saying that he could have written her to be more sympathetic. It's a deliberate choice to write her this way.
Yes, absolutely.
And then ally her with the rebels, I guess. I don't know. Which is interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think later on in the series we get this a lot, and maybe it was just me not keeping track of characters, but it felt like there were a lot of sort of single passage characters who were introduced for the scope of that battle, to tell us what's going on with them in that battle, right? Like he starts to do that a lot. I think maybe after book 6, at least, that's when I started noticing it. so the introduction of additional perspectives wouldn't necessarily quite translate to more characters for us to keep track of, but that might be a style that he's building up to or decided is more appropriate for the later books than now, because like this was just something that's surprising to me, because we always get all the sides in the later books as far as I remember, but
Yeah.
this one's missing some.
And it would be very easy to frame it like to show the Malazan as like, tyrannical and invaders and sort of that, and make you sort of sympathize with the rebels. So it's like, that's why it's interesting to me why he did it this way. I would wonder, like, to ask him. I would be very interested in asking him why he did it that way,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to maybe the standard way we would expect.
Hmm.
We probably would expect to side with the rebels. Usually, if we think about most media, you side with the weak, or the, what's it called, under something. I forget the name.
Yeah.
Not with the invader of a colonial power usually.
Right. But that said, I think, and this rebellion, I don't think it's quite only rebelling against Lassine. I think it's a rebellion against the empire, which
Yeah.
Kellenwed had built, because it's been brewing for a while. But given that, at the very least, we can, I think, be somewhat neutral towards the cause of the rebellion, even though we're not happy with some of the, I guess, the executors of the rebellion, so to speak. I mean, the army is fighting. Yeah, okay, we'll get there. But we don't have reason to like Lassine very much, right? Like, one of our characters is out going off to kill her, and we think that she's betrayed the previous emperor, and everybody's unhappy about that. Dujek One Arm has been outlawed. So she's done a lot that we can potentially be angry about. So we can almost just on the border, we can be with, like, sort of sympathizing with the rebels. I was going to say earlier that, at least the army we can be neutral about, but then I realized, like, they don't, the people in the cities aren't really doing anything to them, I guess.
Yeah.
So the the chain of dogs that Coltane's leading out of the cities because they're being attacked, like they're essentially attacking civilians, right? That's why he has all those refugees he needs to protect and take with him all the way to Arid now. So yeah, that army is not doing great either in terms of gaining our sympathies. So yeah, I think we can maybe sympathize slightly with the cause of the rebellion, but again, like, the number of innocents being hurt in all of this, it's not looking good for them at all.
I would say that the Malazans, writ large, don't come out looking clean. Particularly, the Red Swords were just as brutal early on as the rebels have been. That is why I drew the parallel between both sides are colored red. Like they all have blood on their hands. And on top of that, obviously, then there's just the fact that they're an imperial power colonizing, the Seven Cities region.
But the Red Swords are 7 cities, which is interesting that the worst part of the Malazan that we've been shown is the 7 cities people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are we meant to think that people in the 7 cities are just assholes in general? Or they like killing? I don't know.
No,
Well,
I
I think there's
mean,
plenty of assholes from
we
everywhere in
have
the
other
cities.
people in the area.
I guess so. But the way it's shown in this book, I guess.
I don't know that I would make that blanket statement, but I see your point.
Well, first of all, I
You
want to
do know.
say Fellison is the queen of the assholes. She's not from Seven
True,
Cities.
true.
But that. Oh my God, what was I going to say?
Something about the Malazan being shown
Yeah,
in
their leadership
Oscar.
sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, Coltane is
Yeah.
great, but Pormqual sucks. I mean, let's talk about that. You wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
He's bad. He's inept, and is backstabbing them. And then we were introduced early on, if everyone still remembers, Malik Rel,
Yeah.
who was very suspicious. I wouldn't trust that guy.
Yes.
And he, in many ways, seemed to be the real power instead of Pormqual, who kind of just wants to be like rich and party and screw around. He's not a real leader.
Yeah.
So I don't think they come away looking clean. And certainly Lacine, we have many reasons to hate Lacine at this point, or at the very least to think she's incompetent and sometimes cruel.
Hmm. What do you think is Pornqual's plan? Like, does he really think that Lacine will not do something when she realizes what is going on here? Like, she would never realize that it's all because of his incompetence or negligence, or maybe he's being malicious about it. I'm not sure.
It definitely is a scenario where you feel like, someone is going to have to be blamed for how bad this got. And he seems like the obvious choice. So, like,
Yeah.
if I was him, I would be doing everything in my power to quash the rebellion, as opposed
Yes.
to being a little baby, hiding out. It is like you're going to take the blame unless he can. I don't know. I guess he, certainly there's a possibility of finding a scapegoat, but we'll see.
I mean, he's just
Oh.
heading it out of Eren at this point. He didn't send anybody to help them. They kept waiting for support from him, right? Like that he'd send additional armies and he's got the whole fleet just docked there. I guess now we know now to be his escort while he escapes
Mhm.
out of the city. And yeah, what's unclear to me is if he's just sheerly acting out of cowardice, or if I don't know why I said it like that, cowardice, or if
I kind of like it. It's got a certain je ne sais quoi.
or if he's got some ulterior motive that we aren't privy to yet.
Yeah, I don't know, because I feel like in my mind, maybe I'm wrong, but Lacine seems to be maybe an asshole or whatever, but she doesn't seem to be stupid. So I feel like she would know be something. I mean, she was the head of the claw, right? So like spying and information is her domain, I guess.
Yeah, actually, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would agree she's not stupid, but she is definitely capable of making stupid mistakes. Like to me,
Yeah,
the entire plot with the Jagged Tyrant and Gardens of the Moon is the most harebrained plan. Like, I can't believe that was seriously what they were going with, and it's lucky that it turned out the way that it
yeah,
did.
I agree, but I don't think she would be tricked by Pormqual's plan or whatever. You know what I mean?
No, yeah,
To
yeah,
or
she would,
getting some other scapegoat, right?
yeah. No, okay, I hear you there.
So I don't know. I don't know. I guess I don't know even know why she kept him as a governor. I don't know. There's a lot we don't know about how the bureaucracy and the organization is of the Malazan Empire.
Well,
But
I think we can intuit. I forget what we've been told because we have been told some stuff about Pormqual.
yeah,
But I think this is one of those situations where it's kind of a nepotism sort of situation. Like, you know, he personally or his family were owed like favors, and so he was installed as High
mm,
Fist. He doesn't come across as someone who like earned this,
yeah,
which is somewhat unusual in the Malazan Empire because they do value meritocracy so much. But I mean, talking about the United States of America, another country that purports to value meritocracy, there's a lot of nepotism in a ton of different industries, and it's just a fact of the world that like it's really hard to get rid of that. The old boys network is old and powerful. And so I that's how I forget if we were led to believe it was kind of a political choice, like if that was actually something they said, but or if I am just kind of assuming that and maybe projecting my understanding of Pormqual and kind of my feel for how a lot of these decisions are made into the story.
mm,
Well, and it said it's not this chapter, it's not until chapter 15, but Duiker is thinking about that, about how Kellenved brought in that meritocracy versus the nepotism. But
Right.
he's also thinking about how the scene hasn't been as successful. with that. So they're falling back on the nepotism, is at least it sounded like from Duiker's point of view.
Mm.
One of Lassine's big flaws to me, and maybe this is not accurate, I don't know, I mean, because she is a very mysterious figure, is that she just seems so much worse at instilling loyalty and creating these bonds, that you really need to have as a leader. Like, Coltane is a fucking god at it, right?
Yeah.
Like, his
Mhm.
people worship at his feet. And, and he's rightfully earned that. And clearly, Kellenvad was good at it. We didn't get to really see how he did it, and it kind of seems strange seeing what he's like a Shadow Throne. But with the way everyone talks about him, clearly he evoked a lot of loyalty
Mhm.
from the people working for him, which is just crucial. And Lassine does not seem to have that ability at all. She's ruthless, she does seem intelligent, but she lacks that kind of charisma that wins people over, that, like, when you're the top dog like that, you really need to have it.
Well, and more than that, she's seen as taken over in like assassinating Kellenbed, who
Right.
had that. So
Right.
not only does she not have it, she stole the throne from him, is what the viewpoint would be.
Right.
But we haven't seen everything behind the scenes. Maybe there was a reason she did what she did. Who knows?
Right.
Mm.
We've been told that Tower's coming, right? Probably to Aden or somewhere else, because the ship
Yeah.
that
Tower?
Tavor, sorry, the
Oh,
Paran.
Devore. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
uh,
Pardon me.
the
My hearing is shit.
my pronunciation was probably shit, but what was I saying? Yeah, the ship that Kalam boards to get to, where is he going? Anta
Ragstopper.
Ragstopper
Mm.
is was apparently had brought in weapons ahead of Tavor's fleet. So
Yeah.
she seems to be here, coming to take control of the situation, somewhat like Lon coming to Bale to take over whatever was happening there, right?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of seems to be how the adjuncts work, is they're just like, where are things bad? Go and fix it.
This high fist not living up to his job. This high fist is escaping out of cowardice.
Cowardice. It almost sounds like that could be a name of one of these characters, Cowardice.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, do we want to talk about Kalam then? Kind of seems like a good transition.
Yeah,
I was mildly compelled by these parts.
Really.
I was not crazy about them. They kind of feel like fluff to me. Like, obviously on a practical level, they're necessary to get there, and there's the whole explanation for whatever, someone set him up and got him, pulled a favor to get him on the ship, and it just all felt very convenient. And
Mm.
I don't know, it kind of just, like, when it wasn't boring me, it kind of made me like, is this really, like, this is how he gets there, like, by luck, effectively?
Yeah.
It just felt a little wrong to me. That said, I like Minala is following him, and I like kind of how the direction of all of that. I think that's an interesting plot.
I mean, I like Kalam as a character.
Yeah.
I just don't think really most of the parts in this book were needed, to be honest, because they're not really integral parts of the story. We could have just had him leave, and then a scene of him delivering the book, and then a scene of him again in Aaron now, without any of the middle. In my opinion.
the children wouldn't have happened without that.
I mean, we
trying-
could have had a perspective from just Shadowthrone or something,
That's true.
right?
I don't know that I would have cut as much as maybe you would, Dan, but I do agree that it felt like a lot of his plot lines here are not crucial,
Well,
and they're not the most compelling parts of the book. I would go as far as to say that Kalam's POV might be my least favorite in this book generally, and there's some really good stuff in it. Like, I love the stuff with the children, and there have been, but it just feels like just a reason for some action scenes rather than like, and where he's going. Like, the direction of his story is awesome, and I obviously know how it ends, but the idea of going to assassinate the Empress, that's great, but it's just like we're taking the most winding road there, and I'm not sure every step has been as compelling as the concept.
Mhm.
I think a part of it might be that every other group we are following has multiple people, so we get to see conversations and character interactions. And Kalam
Mhm.
is largely on his own. Even when he's with other people, he's sort of on his own without a lot of interaction or engagement with them. I wonder if that just makes for a slightly less engaging thread to follow, because I sort of agree with you. Like, again, I wouldn't go so far as to say I'd cut things out, because I know some of the things that happen as part of this become important later, but mm, I do sort of wish we were going back to one of the other threads whenever Kalam shows up. So, um, so that is there, and I yeah, I think largely it's because it's just him, and I haven't become interested enough in him as a character to just follow him on his own. But
Yeah.
everyone else, we have other people.
That's a great point. That, like, I really like Kalam, but I feel like I really like Kalam when he's like a supporting character and not when he's like our POV who we're like really following, Like, I really liked his dynamic with Quick Ben and Gardens of the Moon. I like his relationships with a lot of the characters when he was around the other Marines early in Deadhouse Gates. Like, it's great. I think he plays off people really well, but just on his own, he's not as compelling to me.
And well, and I do want to talk about with Kalam was before they get to Aaron, they're walking through that Imperial realm or the Warren, and they come across a palace, and Kalam kind of recognizes some stuff. He sees a symbol that seems to belong to this guy named Kalor.
Yeah.
And so Kalor is this guy, we just briefly see him in the first book. He's with Kaladin Brood in the those rebels. But this character, here's the quote. It says, "What did the bastard call himself? The High King, Kalor, the High King without a kingdom? Thousands of years old, if the legends speak true, perhaps tens of thousands. He claims to have commanded empires, each making the Malazan Empire no larger than a province. He then claimed to have destroyed them by his own hand, destroyed them utterly. Kalor boasted that he had made worlds lifeless." And then here we are in this warren, and it appears to be part of one of his kingdoms. And I just thought that was really fascinating, that here's this minor character that we just got this huge lore drop of.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like this is kind of why I like Malazan so much, is that when you're reading it, you don't necessarily see everything, but then as it gets littered to you, it's like there's so much to this world. It's fascinating. And so this one guy that was just kind of this asshole hanging out with Kaladin Brood is apparently, and we get proof of, that he's thousands of years old, has had these empires that are way larger than the Malazan Empire, and he currently has no kingdom, and he's maybe destroyed his own kingdoms. So he's probably a bad guy.
Who knows? Different
And then I like this
perspective.
warning he thinks to himself, since the bridge burners are getting ready to team up with Kaladin when they left, he thinks, "Whiskey Jack, Quick Ben, keep your heads low, friends. There's a madman in your midst." So we got a little bit of a warning going in, into the future, that maybe not all of Kaladin Brood's, friends are friends.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was reading this part, I was like, oh, I want to read about them now. Tell them Brood and all this stuff are happening, right? There.
I'm sure we will one day.
Well, yeah.
One day. A lot of the stuff about the old emperor has been making me like raring to have a go at one of Esselmon's books, but I'm really trying to hold off. But I might just give in and read, and then we'll reread when we get there.
And
Um,
and also I like how this kind of goes also with all the stuff we've been reading in this book with the whole first empire that we're seeing here in the Seven Cities, because here's this guy that's claimed to command empires that's, almost 100,000 years old or something. And it's like, how many first empires are there? Clearly more
true.
than one. And these are just human. I think Calor's human. I don't know. We don't really know. We can just assume he is.
Oh yeah. How many first empires are there? We should put that on a T-shirt.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that was really cool. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that was interesting, and it could just be interesting for the book, but also interesting
Mhm.
for later.
The other interesting lore drop that seems kind of tertiary at this point was about the holds, the elder holds. We got a lot more info there when they found like a deck, these stone tablets. I actually forget which POV it was. Was that Felison and Haboric and Culp?
It was at the beginning of this chapter, yeah. I think.
It's a good
No,
transition
next chapter,
to talk
beginning
about
next
that.
chapter.
Yeah, they so we learned about the beast hold, and we already known about that these elder warrens exist, but
And I wanted to bring that up, Carl, because they call that the antlered throne when they're talking about the east hold or the beast hold, which then made me think about that little place with that big battle, like 2 or 3 episodes back we talked about, and they were talking about that war for the antlered throne, and so I'm like, how can that have to do with this? Like, that was just a little tiny, one clan of people that broke in half and were fighting each other over the antlered throne. And then here's an antlered throne that appears to have something to do with this beast hold.
that's a
And
great
so
catch.
I don't know what the connection is, but I mean there has to be something. It's too specific.
Maybe it's like the first empire where there were multiple antlered thrones, and like this clan created one inspired by the
Well,
big.
maybe they knew of the antlered throne, and so they were like, okay, well this is our antlered throne.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really interesting connection. I don't know what to make of that.
It just jumped out to me because I had mentioned it a couple weeks ago.
It remind me what the other antlered throne was.
This tribe of people. So in one of the battles,
Oh,
when they like summon the earth
The first
spirits
big
and
battle
like
we saw.
the
oh,
ghosts
that's right.
rise up, and they were like fighting over.
Mhm.
They fought. These tribes of people fought over the antler throne.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I made a joke that it was like some kind of like redneck Iron Throne or something.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
But yeah, so I don't know. It just jumped out at me, and I did want to mention the captain of the rag stopper. We don't have a name or anything for him, but I just like him. He's pretty likable, and I like that they did mention he's got blue skin, so he's Nippon, which the only other Nippon we know is Lysine.
Yeah.
And I do think that's interesting to bring up is that this world's got blue skin people, and why? Like, why are there blue skin people? Because I don't think he's the kind of random person to just say, oh, there's people with random skins, unless like there's connections to stuff. So might be something to just put in your head to think about. Why do we got a race of blue skinned people?
Didn't we have a whole discussion about blue skinned people at some point?
I feel like we did bring it up.
Yes,
I
we
don't
discussed
remember what we said.
potential skin colors for everyone.
Yeah.
And Carl said purple is the right color, I think.
Did I?
I do
That
like
sounds like
purple.
something
I
I
can
would
kind of
say.
agree with that, Carl.
Anyway, yes, we did chat about that.
That must have been right before I joined.
Yeah, it's possible.
I
But
think you guys were on episode 3 or 4 when I came around.
yeah, it's possible that was before you started, but it is interesting still that we have green and blue and a bunch of other
Well,
colors.
but greens are not humans, I guess.
It's true, but are the blue skin people
Well, maybe
humans?
they're humans mixed with something that's also
That's true.
a different color.
The Nippons
Oh.
seem to be human.
Yeah.
They're
Okay,
described as human. They just have blue skin.
I think I just realized where you were going with that, though, Shannon. So yeah, that's cool. We'll chat about that in the spoiler thread.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I think. But
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
I think, yeah, I agree. Well, assuming we're talking about the same thing, but we'll move on. Spoilers. But
Bellison, shall we talk all of that stuff? The
Yes,
tragic death of Culp and Bowden.
yes.
I mean, I had totally forgotten until it was happening that this was how it all went down. With that
Yeah.
freaking shithead, whatever his name is, Narwhal?
Mhm.
Yeah, like something like that.
Who turns into all the fucking rats and oh
Oh.
god.
I didn't.
And that's gotta dude, eaten to death by 1,000 rats. That is, I think, the worst death I've seen yet in this series.
Horrible. And
What
it
did you
happened
think,
so
Steve?
fast.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for how
I guess
great
that
a
was the
character
mercy.
Culp is, like, he really just gets taken out like that. I mean, sometimes this series just, like, holds no punches. It's woof. That was tough. And then Bowden thinking he's fireproof and starting this big fire and then burning to death. Crazy.
Yeah, we were talking about Felison's nice moments earlier, and I think this scene had a
Mhm.
few. It didn't start well for her because Carl told her to be careful because we don't know what's going on. It's like, yeah, watch me not listen to you, and she gulps down a bunch of drink.
Don't get too drunk.
Yeah. But afterwards, there are several sort of quiet moments for her that again made me feel bad for her, uh, even though she was still sort of lashing out at people. As soon as Culp died, and she tells Heberick, well, he should have known. He was the mage. He should have known that something was going on with this guy. So, it's really his fault. He died. And when Heberick says, well, I wish I had the kind of armor you did. And it leads to that whole thing about well, you won't know if I'm bleeding inside the armor, right? Like that's the purpose, to hide the fact that I'm bleeding. And 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 then when Bowden shows up, she takes his head and puts it on her lap and sort of lets him die peacefully. I thought all of that was really touching because again, I think we mentioned this before, right at the very beginning. It's easy to get lost in her lashing out, but I think she's doing a lot of that to still sort of cover her pain in some form. It still makes it really difficult to hang out around her as a character who knows her and as a reader. But there are moments when you're like, maybe maybe I need to give her some more slack.
Well, I like that she was still lashing out at Hiboric, but the first instant I really liked Felison was when, Kolpita, said don't get too drunk, blah, 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 and she does it anyway, and then she has this moment of self-realization where she realized she was so drunk she didn't know what had happened to Culp at first. Like for a minute she didn't even know what was
Yeah.
happening. And she felt ashamed by that. And I mean, she was still lashing out at Hiboric, she wouldn't admit it, but at least there was a part of her that was like realizing, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and he was right. And then she has that moment with Bowden right after that, which is like the first time outwardly she shows any kind of compassion to somebody. That, Felison was okay this chapter. First time I didn't hate her.
Yeah. Like I found the two lines about armor. When Heberick says, God's girl, would that I had your armor, and she says, and should I bleed within it? You see nothing, old man. No one shall see. No one shall know. Like, she doesn't actually say it. It's her internal monologue. And then the last line is in that section is, armor can hide anything until the moment it falls away. Even a child, especially a child. This is immediately after Borden dies. Telling her, you were not what I expected. And this is not in italics, I'm now noticing, so it's not her thought, it's just a comment. I think it's maybe even the author reminding us that this is still a child.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was beautifully written. That whole scene just was very impactful to me. I was very upset. The way Culp went out, I was like,
Yeah. I didn't remember the rat thing until it happened, but I did remember a horrific rat diver scene from this book. And as soon as they climbed over that, I was like, oh shit, now's when that happens, isn't it? What did you think, Steve? through all of this stuff we've been talking about?
I thought Bowden dying that way was kind of a bummer. I was hoping he would stick around a little bit longer. I thought Nawal was it him who said that I forget who was talking, but they talked about shapeshifters are born, they aren't made.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. Kind of, because I was wondering if it's kind of like learning some kind of magical skill, but it seems like they're born. So I thought that was kind of a big deal. But Culpdime was kind of a surprise too. I don't know. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of characters.
This is my first time really getting attached to Colt, and I was, so it hit hard. I think on a prior read, it was more of just like, oh, shocking moment, you know? But this time I was like, oh, I felt it.
I was definitely more attached to him because I knew how he was going to go out, and I was like, oh man, I kind of like this guy. Sucks he's going to get eaten by a bunch of rats.
Yeah, it does so.
It does in fact suck.
Holden's death does make me think even more about like why he was doing it. Like for what reason was he? Because he can't at this point. He can't be just money because he's putting himself in so much danger that he died to protect her. So there must be some other reason, right? Which makes me very curious about it.
I think this is what I was kind of getting to a week or two back about the whole Talon he's still carrying around, and like where did he get that? Why is he doing this? I mean, I think that Bowden, despite being a tremendous asshole and wrong in his approach to so much, he did have honor. I think that there was some kind of honor to him. Like there was I think that was the core of what he was doing. He believed in the Talons. He was a Talon. For whatever reason, he was working with Tavor. We don't really know why, but I think it was his honor, which is why he was doing this.
I see.
Yeah, that makes sense because his dying thought is that he didn't fulfill, presumably, the task that Tavor gave him.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, there were a few interesting things about Felicin again in this section. There's so I think it was Fiddler who was thinking about Upsilard that if she's given the opportunity to be Shaik, that she might take it because she has the memory of being possessed by a god, and with that memory, she also probably has the memory of power, which she might want to acquire again by becoming Shaik. And that we have a moment with Felicin here when she refuses to move right out of that cavern when Culp and Heberic are trying to convince her that they need to go, and she's like, why, there's just water here, we might have food here, like let's just stay here. But they know that they're being chased, so they want to leave. And Felicin says they think it only takes one bite, right, to become a soul taken. So she wants to become a creature that's more powerful than she is, like that. and so it sort of makes sense that she would immediately jump up at the prospect of becoming Shaik. And her ultimate motive right now, I think, is supposedly to take revenge on Lassine and Tavor for what they did to her. But also, it seems maybe not necessarily as like to lord it over people. That's not why she wants power, I would guess, but more that she has more protection, right? Like more of this armor that she's talking about, that maybe this way no one will hurt her. And she talks about how she's not for sale anymore when the diverse guy offers her a life of comfort. But then she starts giving in immediately. So like she seems to be wavering between the two. And yeah, I think she's just such a fascinating character, and all of her behavior and like are explained through her monologues and like the things she says. It's really interesting.
It's a great point about her armor and how embracing the power is like she may view it as a way of armoring herself, even though it potentially throws her into even more danger. But I certainly would see why she would think it would help protect her. And certainly it forwards her towards her goals of getting revenge on Tavor.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see where that goes. Well, I know where it goes, but I'm curious to get there again.
Yeah.
What else? So we talked about
So we,
Kalpan. I think that was your
so we
topic,
get to
Carl.
the
But
end of chapter 14. I was just curious. So we get to the end of this, and we suddenly jump to Leomin and Toblakai, and this old man and young woman approach and stuff. Was anybody else here completely tricked? Because I was. Like, I read this chapter the first time, and I was like, oh, I don't know who this is. Even though I will say the very last line is she commanded, beware his hands, which now makes me think, oh, how did I know that wasn't Hipporic that she was talking about? Because the other guy just had one weird arm. Like, that's not exactly the same. But I don't know. Maybe I'm obtuse, but I didn't get it until, midway through the next chapter when it was spelled out.
yeah, I was trying to remember when I realized, quote unquote, realized. Is it still realization if you're explicitly told? But I think I think it
Well,
was.
these books are so dense. Like, you miss the things that are they're told to
Yeah,
you, and it's like,
that's
oh.
true. I didn't even know Color was in the first book, for instance. So now I realized that he was in the first book. But yeah, I think I only knew for sure in the following chapter when we have that conversation between Felicin and Leoman.
It's definitely written to be ambiguous. I mean, it's definitely written to trick you and make you think, oh, it's Absalar and her father showing up, because they've been kind of the focus of the Shaik Reborn speculation. And, the twist is that it's actually Felicin and Haboric. But, yeah, I don't remember how, if on my first read, if I was shocked or not. I mean, I think I was surprised overall and really satisfied with how Felicin's plot develops there, like how it suddenly connects, and you're like, oh, I see now how this was all leading to this. And without spoiling where things go, it's, to me, makes the struggles of that character and that storyline so much more interesting, knowing that it was leading to this.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think at least the first time I didn't even think of Felicin being the person who reached them. So I probably thought Upsala is just referring to the hands of her father for some reason. We've been told it was formerly injured. Maybe something more happened to it before.
Well, he's missing a hand.
That's probably why I didn't think about it either. You're right. Like, Felicin hadn't even been anywhere near this storyline. And all of a sudden, boom, she's right in the middle of it.
Yep. We know now, but I think at that time, that was, at least for me, absolutely no reason to even suspect that Felicin would be there. But now that I think of it, all the clues are there. With, I mean, the connecting threads were the ones I said before, with Fiddler and his musings on power, and Felicin wishing she had more power, essentially. But yeah. Sorry, I was going to ask Carl, I think it was your topic, the death of Culp and Bowden. Was there anything else that we haven't covered yet on that subject?
No.
Do we then move on to past what a nincompoop and the rest of the group?
Yep. Oh man, I love it. Love them walking into a city that Icarium has destroyed 94,000 years ago. It's brutal.
Yes.
And he's afraid that Mappo's afraid that Icarium's going to wake up and do it all over again. It's the tension here is just exquisite.
It really is. I love that moment of realization he has, of like utter shock that surely this is wrong. There is no way I was 94. I am 94,000 years old. There's absolutely no way. This must be a miscalculation. How many extra zeros has it added?
Yeah, extra zero.
Somebody forgot a decimal point. But yeah, and then Pust shows up and Crocus finds him, right? And is like, "Oh, I'm gonna just stand here in manly silence." Oh, I really love his thinking out loud thing. I'm curious, Steve, what do you think of it? Like, do you find Pust funny at all or annoying? Where do you stand on that spectrum?
I'm more on the annoying side, but he may grow me like Cup did or Croup, right?
Crop,
I
I
Crop,
think.
Crop.
Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't quite won me over just yet.
Yeah, I think I've always been more of a Pust fan than Krupp because I just like Pust's like thinking out loud, dissing people thing that he does.
Yeah,
But
it's
just so
hilarious.
ridiculous, you know, like, oh, all these people are idiots. They're gonna fall for my plan. And
Yeah,
it's just like, does he know what he's? Do you realize you just said that to them? And I mean, maybe.
it's it's in the category of shock them so much they won't even know to ask you questions. They're so baffled by what you're doing. They don't want to engage with
Well,
you, so I can say whatever I want.
mm-hmm. And I think he does do that. I think that he is manipulating people because, you know, we find out here that Apsalar and her father, Relic, I think we find out his name. You know, their whole thing out here was just to complete his fake path of hands, which yeah, he definitely didn't tell them that. He led them to think other things, and he was manipulating Fiddler and everybody, from his monastery or whatever.
This was what I was referencing either last section or the section before, that Shadowthrone straight up tells us, like several chapters ago, his plan to manipulate the Path of Hands people and lead them to the wrong place. And then we'll get that again, even more explicitly, with Plus straight up saying that, yeah, they're going to go to this false gate that leads to a house of the Azath that will eat them up, rather than, the gate that leads to the antlered throne.
We can't hear you, Dan. But what? Wait, there's a path that leads to the antlered throne. I missed the antlered throne connection. Can you
They
tell me again?
didn't say that explicitly, but
Well,
it's
that's the beast hold, the path of hands.
Yes, Path of Hands leads to the beast hold.
I see. Okay, and they want dominion over all the other soul taken and diverse. So
Yes,
they want.
they'll become the quote unquote god of the diverse and soul taken is what they think. Don't know if that's
What
true
they
or not,
think,
but that
right?
seems to
Yeah.
be what they're after.
Oh, and that's why once again they're fighting over the antlered throne. Okay, that connection makes sense again. The humans and beasts thing that you were talking about before,
Mhm.
Carl. Dance facts. I wanna know, what do you think of the humor with Pust?
I like him. He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, funny guy.
You like his manly silence while he thinks out loud at
Yeah,
everybody and what he's gonna do.
he's a funny guy. What I was wondering was, why does Shadowthrone care about the shapeshifters? Like, what's his benefit from misleading them, I guess?
Hmm.
Yeah. There was something about the coincidence of the rebellion and
Mm-hmm.
the path of hands, right? That either someone coordinated the rebellion to coincide with the convergence of the path of hands, or the path of hands was triggered to be in the same year as the rebellion. One of those. Which
Yeah.
is interesting. Yeah. Again, I don't have the answer to your question. I'm just pointing out some more. What what's the word I'm looking for? Plotting that was
Mm.
revealed to us. Well, not revealed so much
Yeah,
as like
and I would
speculated to us.
I would also point out just as a thing, some of these particularly the diverse, I think we've heard of, or I would say enemies of his. I mean, it sounds like they were pretty awful over in Unta, like where he
Mm-hmm.
was the emperor, like especially whatever his name is, the rat. I mean, it said like he was, terrorized them over there for a while. So I mean, he could just be wiping out his old enemies.
Maybe. don't know. But there is isn't there like a whole thing that the shapeshifters have a connection with the Talanimas? And aren't the Talanimas connected to the Emperor somehow?
Hmm,
I don't know if it means
that
anything,
is a
but
thing. There is. Well, Kellenved was in control of at least what is it, the Logros
yeah.
Talanamas. I don't know about all of them, but I know that specific clan. Like for whatever reason, over here in Seven Cities, he had control of them, and he used them during his initial taking over the Seven Cities. Yeah, I don't know. Like, but yes, they are definitely involved with Kellenved. I don't know.
Yeah. And they also talk about the warrens in Raraku, or one warren that's torn into several pieces,
Yeah.
and one of them leads to the path of hands, right? One of the torn fragments leads to the path of hands. Is that right?
Hmm.
I guess so.
Yeah. Waits like a clenched hand holding down this fragment of realm. Ask the Jag what waits within the realm. Oh, and there's an Azath house also somewhere.
From our lore. That's
Mm-hmm.
where they're leading them
Mm.
to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they're hoping that all the soul taken and divers will just be captured by the Azath house, right? Because that one blocks powerful things.
Right.
Oh, speaking of powerful things, that Tobler guy, he just went hunting soul taken, and we don't know yet if he's come back, right? But he's like, I'm gonna go hang out and kill some soul taken and come back.
We also learned he's haunted by the spirits of the people he killed,
Yes.
and his sword
Mhm.
is a wooden sword that has spirits inside it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it
Yes,
like an
it
Amanda
does.
Shrake sword?
Sounds
That
like it,
has
doesn't it?
Maybe.
Yeah. But
I
probably,
guess there are some similarities. Yeah.
yeah. Steve, were you gonna say something? I thought you were. Okay. Yeah, that whole Warren thing was interesting. I didn't fully understand what was going on there.
I didn't either.
I have a question. Steve, do you trust Leomen and Toblikai?
No,
why not?
not at all.
Yeah. Would you like to elaborate?
I don't think just many people in this book. It feels like everyone. I mean, even like Whiskey Jack, who seems like the kind of character you'd want to hang out with and like have a beer with, and hang like hear his stories. He's not really. I mean, he does a lot of things but you would mostly consider a villain would do, just because that's the role they live in and their situation. So I don't really trust anyone, and no one really seems to be what they appear to be in this series, right? I mean, very few people. Maybe Krupp. Other than that, it's like I trust Krupp.
Well, that's hysterical because Krupp is also not what he appears to be. He's the eel, right? Like he has this whole second persona.
Well, there you go. Yeah. At least he's funny, I guess. Well, he's funny now. He wasn't at first.
Oh, I love Krupp. Yeah.
He's grown on me. But no, I don't trust anyone. Everyone has some kind of motive, or kind of something up their sleeve.
You don't trust Crooked? No.
I doubt. I don't. I'm skeptical of everyone in this series. No one
Did you
is
just say
what they appear
Crocus?
to be.
All right.
I would definitely not trust him. He's an idiot kid.
He's done some dumb things.
But he was the one who found Pust. He's at least a competent idiot kid now.
Okay.
I like that he's like taking after Icarium and is like imitating Icarium and the way
Oh
he likes
yeah,
to talk. Like that's so funny. That's a great little character moment.
that was so adorable.
Yeah.
Yes. And his like I like when Fiddler tells him, when Crocus is stressing out about what Upsalar will do about Shaik and at her being misled by Bust. And Fiddler tells him, I think it's Fiddler, that it's her decision to make whatever it is. Like basically that you don't have a role in that. I thought that hit home. that was really important, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it is none of his business. It's not like they're
That's true.
not even for going out or anything. They have no, technically, they're just friends.
Not
So
yet, but when she met him again, she gave him a big old hug, right? Right? Did I read that correctly?
I
Or did
would
she
say
yeah,
try to
but
kill
a
him?
little more than friends. I mean, I don't know that, like, I don't think they have the terms like boyfriend and girlfriend, but like, I would say they're going out. They like have kissed before, but at this
Mm,
point,
have they? I can't
yes,
I
remember.
think
Have
so,
they?
yeah. I think they
yeah,
have.
their relationship developed between books.
Okay.
At the start
Maybe
of the,
they're
they're all
yeah.
over each other.
Okay. Maybe like friends with benefits or something. Who knows? So I guess there's nothing officially, I guess. Is there?
Semi-official. I mean, I don't
Okay.
know. I don't think they've had like a talk about it.
Because at least in this book, they're never like, I don't know, doing anything together. You know what I mean? We've never seen any description of them doing anything together that might make us think that there's too much more to their relationship, I guess.
There was
You know what I
one
mean?
time, in, was it Eliton? Like before the whole group split up, before Kalam went his own way,
Hmm.
when someone asks where those two are, and it's like, they're in the garden, like with an eye roll that basically they're off by themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess.
I don't know.
But we're
Yeah.
not seeing a POV of Crocus or Absalard.
No, we haven't had one at all in this book
Yeah,
from either
it
of
is
them.
True,
strange.
true.
We
That's
don't
true.
get their perspectives in this book.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know. And I think we have been sort of led to believe that they are a thing now. Although when she ran off at that point, it's like, well, was that true? Did we have it right? But then as soon as they meet now, she gives him a hug. So I think they were sort of together.
She could have kissed him, maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
What do you know, Dan?
Not much. I was,
He doesn't even know for certain that he is Dan. Who
yeah. Who knows? Who are we?
knows?
But one thing I was wondering, like, if everyone else also had my same like opinion about, because they ask the father, why are you continuing to help Pust and doing this thing, and he's like, oh, I need to pay my debts because they saved my life. I guess Shadowfront saved my life, and then I think. What is it? They tell him, but they were the one that killed everyone else. So is that actually saving your life? And he was like, oh no, it's still a debt. I'm like, is it really? Is would I don't know. Would you guys think like him too? Seems like a weird reasoning to me.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question?
Like, because he thinks he's in debt to Shadowthrone for saving his life, even though Shadowthrone was the one that killed everyone else. So he just sort of spared him, and that's why he thinks he
Yeah,
owes them,
right.
which is a bit weird logic in my mind.
My reading of it is that there is some sort of magical connection that way. That
Mm,
like it's like they talk about a life for a life. Like that's come up multiple times. It came up with Perrin, and
yeah.
it comes up here as well. And that he was supposed to die, but he didn't, even though the person who was supposed to kill him is the one who saved him. I mean, it is convoluted. I don't really get it either. It is strange,
I
but
mean,
I
I
feel
would
like there
just
may be a
say that
magical.
he's dealing with a god that could kill him at any point, so he's just going to shrug and say, "Okay, I'll go along with this because I don't want to die."
Yeah, I can understand that, but I wouldn't be grateful to him. I wouldn't feel like I
But you
owe
might say
anything
that
to
out
him.
loud if you think he could hear.
I guess so. Fair enough.
One
Fair
of
enough.
the most like quietly horrible things done in the series. Like it really is kind of skipped over after we're like through it. That just sicking the hounds on like innocent people and at the start of Gardens of the Moon, like that's crazy. Why? To what end? It's what are you like? I get he wanted to kill the soldiers, and like fighting the soldiers is one thing, but like all the innocents, I don't understand it. I don't know what he was playing at there.
I think
I thought
witnesses
they
or
were covering
something.
up that they were taking
Oh
Apsalar.
yeah.
That
Or
would
we were
cover up.
covering up that it was targeted towards the soldiers. I think we were just trying to make it feel that it was just like, oh, something happened here that killed everyone, not specifically the soldiers. I think.
It's just
Not
like
that
they
there was logic.
immediately.
Well, not that we're justifying it, but there was a cold logic to it.
I just feel like it's not going to stay a mystery. People are going to know who did this. They find out very quickly that like mages are able to like sense other mages. They can sense the magic, so someone would be able to be like, oh, shadow hounds were here, and which is basically what happens. And like it to me just was not a very well thought out. Like I understand his logic, but to me, like it makes way less sense than like his plan with the path of hands. Like that to me, I like follow what's going on there. He haven't spelled out his motivation yet, but like that I can see it with the massacre at the start of book one. I'm like, I don't like. I get he wanted Apsalar to have Cotillion possess her, and use her to kill Lacine, but it just I don't
Yeah.
like. I feel like there are better ways of doing that. It feels like needlessly barbaric and convoluted.
I feel like I had this exact same argument when we read it the first time that you're saying now. So I do agree with you. But I don't know. Because the thing is, we don't get many perspectives from the people making or the forces making all these plans and convoluted decisions, right? So we
Right.
don't get any of these gods' perspectives really, or their reasoning why all these powerful characters are doing what they're doing. Most of the time, we're like the bridge burner and stuff like that, which are dealing with the consequence of the thing. So it seems somewhat arbitrary sometimes because we're not privy to those parts of the story, I guess. Right?
Yeah. This is another thing I maybe want to ask Steven Erikson about. Like, what the hell was going on there? Like, are we
If we're
missing
talking
something?
about Kellenbed, though, I would just say, I would point out that this is a guy who started out on Malaz Island and, built up an army, built up an empire, and then left that to go become a god. How
Yeah.
much does he really care about other people? Like, we're making big assumptions, I think, to think that he's not anything but completely self-obsessed with himself and godhood.
I think that there's a
That could be
difference.
why he's trying to take out all these diverse and soul takens, just so there won't be any other gods on the street.
Maybe.
Right. I mean, I think there's a difference between him being like a narcissist and like also being like comfortable just like wiping people out for very little reason. Like
He
that
just doesn't care about them.
one to me is even more evil than the other, and so it's like just another level, and it's one of those things that I just don't get the sense. I don't know. I have the whole book series, you know, confusing my portrait of him in my mind. So it's hard talking about all of that without getting into later spoilers. But it's just I just struggle to wrap my head around what was the point of that, other
Mm.
than hide the fact that you kidnapped and possessed this girl.
Well, what I hear is we'll have some good discussions in the future about
Yeah. Yeah.
how does this make sense with what he's done in the past.
Right.
So I don't think he did that to take possession of Uppsala, right? Like that was just sort of something that happened in the process. But
Yeah, it did seem like they stumbled across her. Like she wasn't the point.
and at the time we didn't know that this was the former emperor letting the hounds loose. So it felt like some god just doing something that he was angry about. But now that we know, yes, in retrospect, it is strange that he would kill his own people, so to speak, to avenge his death from Lacine. Is that what it is?
I mean, maybe he was just having a power trip, you know? He's recently turned into a god and was just, like, all up his godly ass about it. I don't know.
Mm.
It is strange.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is strange, and it is something that I tried to wrap my head around once we knew that it was Kellenwood. But the purpose wasn't to hide the possession of Upsalar. I think that may or may not have happened. He just happened to be there.
Mm. Mm.
Cool.
Back to Deadhouse Gates. Do we want to do quotes, or is there something we haven't talked about?
I'm thinking. I don't know. I guess we'll find more things as we try to get through quotes. If we missed anything, I feel like we covered most of what happens. So
Let me see if I have any quotes.
I have some.
going because Dan is apparently not a
Please.
quote guy.
Please, Steve.
I made it to quotes tonight.
Yes, you did.
Nice.
I'm a big boy.
Were we quick or did you manage to stay up longer?
No, I think it was a little
Okay.
faster tonight.
All right, Steve, give us your quotes.
I have two, and I don't have chapters written down. I believe this is from chapter 13. Oh no, 12? I don't know. Anyway, why do the survivors remain anonymous, as if cursed, while the dead are revered? Why do we cling to what we lose while ignore what we still hold?
That is a good one.
The second one, show me a mortal who is not pursued, and I'll show you a corpse. Every hunter is hunted. Every mind who knows itself has stalkers. We drive and are driven. The unknown pursues the ignorant. The truth assails every scholar well enough to know his own ignorance, for that is the meaning of unknown truths.
Nice. That's the Heberic, raving Heberic quote.
I'm just happy I made it to quotes.
Yes.
Yeah, happy to have
While
you.
we're in 13, I'll throw out. This was Lull talking to Duiker. He said, "They mock our noble-born. Did you know that, old man? They've named us the Debral. You know what that translates to? The chain of dogs.
Mm.
Coltane's chain of dogs. He leads, yet is led. He strains forward, yet is held back. He bears his fangs, yet what nips at his heels is not those he yet is not what nips at his heel those that are he is sworn to protect. Ah, there's a profundity of such names, don't you think? So we get the name of the book and
Yeah.
what the chain of dogs is.
That's really cool. I didn't quite remember that we get an explicit explanation for the chain of dogs, but that's pretty cool. And I think
Mhm.
I don't remember if Gardens of the Moon did this, but from this book on to several more in the series, the subdivisions in each book, the fourth book is usually the title of the book itself. Like this one's called
Mm,
Deadhouse
right.
Gates. The next section, and like I mean, like the book 1, book 2 at the beginning. The fourth
Yeah.
one is
Yeah,
Deadhouse
the last
Gates.
book is always the name of the book, right?
Yeah.
Didn't realize
Yeah.
that.
And then until the chained god, because that one's
Yeah, the
different.
cripple god that I think
he divides that one very different.
Yeah.
The crippled god. Yeah. That one's divided kind of differently.
and everything
I'm not
between
sure if the last chapter is not.
everything between Gardens of the Moon and Cripple God has 4 sections, and those two have more. I think Cripple
Mhm.
God has more, but I don't remember. And I don't think
Sound like
the final section of
7?
Gardens of the Moon was called
I don't know.
Gardens of the Moon. Sorry,
Let
Shannon.
me see.
Were
I'm
you
gonna
gonna
start
say
paying
something?
attention if we actually get the title in the book, because Gardens of the Moon we did when
Mm,
Crocus and
that's true.
Apsalar were talking about the Gardens of the Moon, and then here's where we get this one. And I don't remember, like, moving forward, if we always get what the title is in the book. I don't know. I'll have to pay
Maybe
attention.
when they enter the Azap, we're going to be like, what is this? Some sort of Deadhouse Gate? Right?
Yeah,
Hopefully. We can only hope.
that's true.
So my quote is the epigraph for chapter 15. A god walking mortal earth trails blood. Sayings of the fool. I just love it. It's a haunting image, and it definitely rings true for this series. Whenever the gods play with mortals, people die.
It does remind me of that I completely forgot that Fenrir is in the world. Like, what happened to that whole thing? He's just there, and then we kind of forgot about it. Like the whole. I assume it's gonna come up in some other books or later in this book, but I had completely forgotten about it. But it's a big thing that happens, right?
Yeah.
But he actually hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah, no, it hasn't, as far as we know.
Yeah.
My
And then
quote. Sorry, go
also,
ahead, Shannon.
oh, I was gonna say add more quotes. My other quote, another quote was chapter 14. This was that quote or what I mentioned earlier with Fellison.
Mm-hmm.
It was the moment I liked Fellison where it says, cold gripped Fellison, he's dead, oh gods, he's dead, devoured, and I watched, drunk and uncaring, noticing nothing. One thing at a time, Culp's dead. She bit back a sob, and then it kind of keeps going. But like, there you go. Like Fellison was nice for once.
Yeah. Fellison had some good moments this chapter. My
I
quote
feel like let me look real quick.
is
Well, you
some.
do a quote, and I think I got another one for 15.
Okay. Some ales grow on you, some grow in you. Kalam and the guy who arranges the boat for him.
I like that one. That guy
And
was funny.
yeah, that guy was funny. Chapter 14, the epigraph. The goddess drew breath and all was still.
Yeah.
I loved that. I loved that, especially because of the whirlwind that's been raging for the last few chapters. And as soon as, I think when when Fellison comes out, or they head, at what point does it stop? When she meets Leoman, is it? That's when the whirlwind stops and they're waiting to see if she's Shaik reborn or if she can take on that mantle. I mean, she's not.
Here's one I really liked in chapter 15.
Mhm.
So we didn't really talk about it, but there was that bit where Nether and Nil had to sacrifice the horse.
Oh yeah.
That left their hands permanently black and just left them all like sobbing afterwards and all this stuff. And so Duiker has this quote I really liked where it says, "The Wiccans know the gift of power is never free. They know enough not to envy the chosen among them, for power is never a game, nor are glittering standards raised to glory and wealth. They disguise nothing in trappings, and so all see what they'd rather not. That power is cruel, hard as iron and bone, and it thrives on destruction." And that's, I think, what we have seen with definitely the Wiccan sorcerers through this is
Right.
because Sormo is like aging, he's like withering away.
Mm.
And not just the Wiccan sorcerers. It talked about the healers in this chapter in 15. It was talking about how the healers are so worn out, their like bones are like just breaking. Like they have healed people to the point that they now have osteoporosis, and like their bones are just breaking, just sitting there. Like all of this power that we see has a consequence, and it's pretty awful.
Yeah. My only regret, something bonitis, I don't remember. There's some quote there, but I forget.
Yeah.
But yeah, that scene when he was saying, "Oh, the guy was lifting like a cup and his arm broke," I was like, "Ugh." It
That one,
feels
yep.
bad. Gives a very
just
strong impression of what's going on, I guess.
Yeah.
well, what they're willing to sacrifice to heal other people. Like that's wow. I mean, I'm a nurse. I don't know if I would do that for my patients. Be like, man, really? Give up my health and put me in a position where I'm going to die to take care of you? That's
That is
a
crazy.
thing.
Yeah.
I like when Lal tells I was gonna say Duiker, I am falling into your silences, old man. When when Duiker has his own, like, he's lost in his own thoughts, and Lal is like, yeah, I'm doing that with you now. Yeah.
And the last quote I had was also from 15. It's from when the nobles come to Coltane and everybody with all that gold, and they're like, we want to buy back our servants because we're tired of wiping our own butts. And Coltane refuses them and then takes them into the army. And afterwards, after they join up, I think this is Duiker is having the thought or saying something. He says, the captain. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was Lull. The captain appeared at his side. As servants, Lull said, rumbling, they might have survived, then sold on to other noble families. Now with swords in their hands, they will die. Can you hear the silence, Duiker? Do you know what this signifies? I imagine you do all too well. So they could have, they could have gone back to being slaves and lived, but they were choosing to pick up the sword and die. And I think that quote hit me harder, I think, than almost any other in that chapter.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah. Yeah, this was another very rich section with, I think chapter 13 had several that I liked, but I can't seem to find them. But you covered quite a few good ones, Shannon. But any others before we wrap up? Okay, then thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week with the next 3 chapters, which will be, how far did we get today? 15. So 16, 17, 18 for next week. Bye.